My name is Jesus, and I am 58 years old. For 35 years, I believed I knew exactly who my wife was. I trusted her with my life, my savings, and every dream I ever built with these two hands. But one Saturday afternoon, I drove to my son-in-law's house to fix a leaky faucet, and I saw my wife's car parked right there at his gate. She had told me she was meeting an old friend across town. My heart sank before I even reached the door. Before we dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you have ever felt like the people closest to you might be hiding something, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Stick with me because what I heard through that door turned my whole world upside down. I need to take you back to where it all began, back to when life made sense, and trust was something I never questioned. I met Linda in the spring of 1989. We were both young, barely in our 20s, working long shifts at a food packaging plant on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. She worked the morning shift on the assembly line, and I handled the loading dock in the afternoons. We crossed paths during the shift change, and every day she would give me this little smile as she walked past. It took me 3 weeks to work up the courage to ask her name, and another 2 weeks after that to invite her for coffee at the diner down the street. Linda was different from anyone I had ever met. She grew up in a small town in Kentucky, the youngest of 5 children, in a family that did not have much, but always had enough love to go around. She had this quiet strength about her, the kind that made you believe everything would be okay as long as she was by your side. When she laughed, her whole face lit up, and I remember thinking I would do anything to keep that smile on her face for the rest of my life. We got married in a small ceremony at the county courthouse, just the two of us, and a couple of friends as witnesses. We could not afford a fancy wedding, but Linda said she did not need one. She said all she needed was me, and I believed her with every fiber of my being. Those early years were tough. We rented a tiny apartment with paper-thin walls and a heater that barely worked in the winter. I picked up extra shifts whenever I could, and Linda stretched every dollar like it was made of rubber. We ate a lot of rice and beans, but we were happy. We were building something together, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. After a couple of years at the packaging plant, I got an opportunity to work construction. The pay was better, but the work was backbreaking. I spent my days carrying lumber, pouring concrete, and climbing scaffolding in the blazing summer heat and the bitter winter cold. My hands grew calloused, and my back started aching before I even turned 30. But every night I came home to Linda, and she would have dinner ready and a warm smile waiting for me. She made every sacrifice worth it. When Linda got pregnant with our daughter, I cried. I stood right there in our cramped little kitchen, and I cried like a baby. I had never wanted anything more in my life than to be a father, and now it was finally happening. I promised myself that day that I would give my child everything I never had. I would work harder, save more, and build a real home for my family. Megan was born on a Tuesday morning in March, and the moment I held her in my arms, I understood what people meant when they talked about unconditional love. She was so tiny, so perfect with these little fingers that wrapped around my thumb like she was holding on for dear life. I whispered to her that I would always protect her, that I would always be there for her no matter what. And I kept that promise. I worked 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. I missed sleep, I missed meals, but I never missed a single one of Megan's school plays or soccer games. I taught her how to ride a bike in the parking lot of our apartment complex. I sat up with her when she had nightmares telling her stories until she fell back asleep. I helped her with her homework, even when the math got too complicated, and we had to figure it out together. When Megan was 15, we finally saved enough for a down payment on a house. It was a modest place, a 3-bedroom ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood. But to us, It was a palace. I remember Linda crying when we got the keys, and Megan running through the empty rooms calling dibs on the bedroom with the big window. That house represented everything I had worked for. It was proof that all those years of sacrifice had meant something. Megan grew up to be a smart, ambitious young woman. She got a scholarship to Ohio State, became the first person in our family to earn a college degree. I was so proud, I thought my heart would burst at her graduation. She landed a good job at a marketing firm downtown and seemed to be on her way to a bright future. Then she met Derek. Derek came into our lives about 7 years ago. Megan brought him home for Thanksgiving dinner, introduced him as her boyfriend from work. He was polite, well-dressed, said all the right things. He complimented Linda's cooking, asked me about my work, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know us. I wanted to like him. I wanted to believe that my daughter had found someone who would treat her right. They got engaged after a year of dating and married 6 months later. I paid for most of the wedding because Derek's family said they were going through some financial difficulties. I did not mind. I would have given anything to see my daughter happy on her special day. She looked so beautiful walking down that aisle, and when I gave her hand to Derek, I trusted him to take care of her the way I always had. In the beginning, Derek seemed like a good husband. He and Megan bought a house in a nice neighborhood, and I helped them with the down payment. When things around the house needed fixing, I was always there with my tools, happy to help. I taught Derek how to change the oil in his car, how to fix a running toilet, how to patch drywall. I treated him like the son I never had. Then Emma came along, and my heart grew even bigger. My granddaughter was born 4 years ago, and from the moment I first held her, she had me wrapped around her little finger. She has her mother's eyes and her grandmother's laugh, and spending time with her became the highlight of my week. I would pick her up from preschool, take her to the park, buy her ice cream even when Linda said I was spoiling her. Being a grandfather gave my life a new sense of purpose. For a while, everything seemed perfect. I had a loving wife of 35 years, a successful daughter, a son-in-law who seemed decent enough, and a granddaughter who brought joy into every room she entered. I thought I had done everything right. I thought all those years of hard work had paid off in the most beautiful way possible. But looking back now, I can see the cracks that I was too blind to notice at the time. It started with small things. Linda began going out more often, meeting friends I had never heard of, running errands that took longer than they should have. Megan stopped calling as frequently, and when we did talk, the conversations felt shorter, more superficial. Derek, who used to be friendly and talkative, became distant and distracted whenever I visited. I told myself I was imagining things. Families go through phases, I thought. People get busy with their own lives. There was nothing to worry about. But deep down, something felt off. I just could not put my finger on what it was. That Saturday started like any other. I woke up around 6:30, made myself a pot of coffee, and sat on the back porch watching the sun come up over the trees. Linda was still asleep, which was unusual because she was normally an early riser. When she finally came downstairs around 8, she seemed rushed, distracted. She told me she was going to meet her old friend Patricia for lunch. Patricia supposedly lived on the other side of Columbus, a good 45-minute drive. Linda said they might go shopping afterward, so she probably would not be back until late afternoon. I nodded, kissed her on the cheek, and told her to have a good time. After she left, I remembered something. Earlier that week, Derek had mentioned that the kitchen faucet at their house was leaking. He had complained about it during a phone call with Megan, and I had overheard when Megan put him on speaker. I figured it would be a nice surprise if I drove over and fixed it for them. It would give me a chance to see Emma, and maybe Megan would invite me to stay for lunch. I gathered my tools, loaded them into my truck, and headed out. It was a beautiful day, clear skies, and a gentle breeze, the kind of weather that makes you feel grateful to be alive. I turned on the radio and hummed along to some old country songs, thinking about how lucky I was to have such a wonderful family. The drive to Derek and Megan's house took about 20 minutes. They lived in a newer subdivision with neatly trimmed lawns and matching mailboxes. As I turned onto their street, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Parked right in front of their house was Linda's car. That dark blue Honda Accord was as familiar to me as my own reflection. I had bought it for her 3 years ago for our anniversary. There was no mistaking it. My first thought was confusion. Linda said she was meeting Patricia on the other side of town. What was her car doing here? Maybe she had decided to stop by and visit Emma before meeting her friend. Maybe her plans had changed, and she forgot to mention it. I pulled my truck over a few houses down, not wanting to block the driveway. As I walked toward the house, I noticed that the curtains in the living room were drawn shut. That was strange. Megan always kept them open during the day because she liked the natural light. The front door was closed, and I could not hear any sounds from inside. No television, no music, no little girl's laughter. The house seemed unusually quiet for a Saturday morning. I walked up the porch steps, my toolbox in one hand, and reached for the doorbell with the other. But just before my finger touched the button, I heard voices coming from inside. Muffled, but distinctly adult. I recognized Linda's voice immediately. Then Megan's, and then Derek's. They were talking about something serious. I could tell by the tone, low and urgent, the kind of voices people use when they do not want to be overheard. I know I should have rung the doorbell. I know I should have announced my presence like a normal person. But something held me back. Call it instinct, call it a gut feeling, call it the universe trying to warn me. I lowered my hand and leaned closer to the door. The first clear sentence I heard came from Derek's voice. He said, "We need to finalize this before he finds out. The nursing home I found accepts patients with early dementia symptoms." My blood ran cold. Nursing home dementia. Who were they talking about? Then I heard Linda's voice, and everything I thought I knew about my life shattered into a million pieces. She said, "I know, but we have to be careful. Jesus has been forgetting things lately. This is for his own good." They were talking about me. My own wife, my own daughter, and my son-in-law were standing in that living room discussing putting me in a nursing home because they claimed I had dementia. But I do not have dementia. My mind is as sharp as it has ever been. I can remember what I had for breakfast 3 days ago. I can recite my social security number, my bank account numbers, the dates of every important event in my life. There is nothing wrong with my memory. I stood there on that porch, frozen, my hand still raised toward a doorbell I would never press. My legs felt weak, and I had to grab the railing to steady myself. This could not be happening. This had to be some kind of mistake, some kind of misunderstanding. But the voices kept coming, and with each word, the truth became more and more undeniable. I moved quietly away from the front door, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. There was a side gate that led to the backyard, and I knew from previous visits that the kitchen window was often left slightly open for ventilation. If I could get closer, I might be able to hear more clearly. The gate creaked slightly as I pushed it open, and I froze, waiting to see if anyone inside had noticed. But the voices continued uninterrupted, so I slipped through and made my way along the side of the house. The kitchen window was cracked open about 2 inches, just as I had hoped. I pressed myself against the wall and listened. Derek was speaking again. "The nursing home is called Shady Pines. It is about 3 hours from here up near Cleveland. They specialize in patients with memory issues. Once he is admitted, he will not be able to leave without medical authorization. Megan's voice chimed in. But how do we convince him to go? Dad is stubborn. He is not going to agree to this willingly. Linda answered, and her words cut through me like a knife. We do not need him to agree. I have been talking to the neighbors, telling them that Jesus has been forgetting things, getting confused, wandering off. Mrs. Patterson next door said she saw him standing in the driveway last week, looking lost. If we can get enough people to back up our story, we can have him declared incompetent. I wanted to scream. Mrs. Patterson saw me standing in the driveway because I was waiting for a package to be delivered. I was not lost. I was not confused. But they were twisting innocent moments into evidence of a disease I did not have. Derek continued with the details. I talked to Dr. Morrison. He owes me a favor from back when I helped him with some investment advice. He is willing to sign off on a preliminary diagnosis based on our observations. It will not hold up forever, but it will be enough to get the process started. A doctor was willing to lie about my mental health. A medical professional was going to fabricate a diagnosis to help them steal everything I had worked for. Megan asked the question that revealed the true motive behind all of this. Once Dad is in the nursing home, what happens to the house? Linda's response made my stomach turn. The house is in both our names, but once Jesus is declared incompetent, I will have power of attorney. We can sell it and split the money. Derek, you said you need capital for that new business venture, right? This will solve all your problems. Derek laughed, actually laughed, and said, between the house and his retirement accounts, there should be plenty to go around. The old man worked like a dog his whole life, might as well put that money to good use. I felt like I had been punched in the chest. They were not worried about my health. They did not care about my well-being. This was about money, my house, my savings. Everything I had spent 35 years building was being divided up like leftovers at a dinner party. Megan spoke again, and her words were perhaps the most painful of all. Dad worked his whole life for that house, but he is getting old anyway. After a few months in that place, he probably will not even remember who we are. It is not like we are hurting him. We are just planning for the future. Just planning for the future. That is how my daughter justified betraying her own father. That is how she rationalized throwing me away like yesterday's garbage. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made for her. The 60-hour work weeks, the missed vacations, the times I went without, so she could have new shoes for school or money for college textbooks. I thought about the wedding I paid for, the down payment I gave them for their house, the countless hours I spent helping Derek with projects he was too lazy or incompetent to do himself. And this was my reward. This was how they chose to repay me. I heard Linda say something about the timing. We need to move fast. I have been slowly transferring money from our joint account into my personal account. About $50,000 so far. Once Jesus is in the nursing home, I will have access to everything else. $50,000. My wife had been stealing from our savings behind my back for who knows how long. Money I had earned with my sweat, my aching back, my calloused hands. The conversation continued, but I had heard enough. I stepped away from the window, my legs unsteady, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. I made my way back through the side gate, careful not to make any noise that would alert them to my presence. I walked to my truck in a daze, climbed into the driver's seat, and sat there for a long time. I do not know how long exactly. It could have been minutes or hours. Time had lost all meaning. Eventually, I started the engine and drove home. I do not remember the drive. I do not remember parking in the driveway or walking through the front door. I just remember sitting in my living room, staring at the walls of the house I had worked so hard to build, and feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life. But somewhere beneath the pain, beneath the shock and the betrayal, something else was stirring. It was small at first, just a flicker, but it grew stronger with each passing moment. It was anger. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger that makes you do stupid things. This was cold, calculated, patient. This was the anger of a man who has been wronged and knows exactly what he needs to do. They thought I was weak. They thought I was old and confused and easy to manipulate. They thought they could throw me away and take everything I had. They were wrong. The days following that Saturday were some of the hardest of my life. I had to go home and look Linda in the eye, eat dinner across the table from her sleep in the same bed. I had to pretend that everything was normal when inside I was burning with rage and grief. But I knew that if I confronted them immediately, I would be at a disadvantage. They had been planning this for who knows how long. They had a doctor in their pocket, neighbors who would back up their lies, and a strategy all mapped out. If I wanted to fight back, I needed to be smart about it. So I watched. I listened. I gathered information. I started paying attention to things I had previously ignored. The way Linda would excuse herself to take phone calls in another room. The way she would check the mail before I had a chance to look through it. The way she would suddenly change the subject whenever I brought up finances or future plans. I noticed that certain documents were missing from our filing cabinet. Our marriage certificate, the deed to the house, my retirement account statements. When I casually asked Linda about them, she said she was organizing our paperwork and had put them somewhere safe. She smiled when she said it, and I smiled back even though I knew she was lying through her teeth. One evening, I waited until Linda was in the shower, and I went through her purse. I found a slip of paper with a phone number and the name Shady Pines written in her handwriting. I took a photo of it with my phone and put the paper back exactly where I found it. I checked our bank statements online, something I rarely did because Linda had always handled our finances. What I found made my blood boil. Over the past 6 months, she had made dozens of transfers from our joint account to a personal account I did not even know she had. The total was just over $52,000. $52,000 that we had saved together over 3 decades of marriage. Money that was supposed to be for our retirement, for emergencies, for whatever the future might bring. She had been stealing it bit by bit while I worked and trusted and believed in our partnership. I knew I needed help, someone I could trust completely. I thought about my options and realized there was only one person who fit that description. Tom had been my best friend since high school. We had worked construction together for 20 years before he retired. We had been through everything together, good times and bad, and he was the one person in the world I knew would never betray me. I called him and asked if we could meet for coffee. When we sat down at the diner, I told him everything. Every word I had overheard, every piece of evidence I had gathered, every fear and doubt that had been eating me alive. Tom listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and let out a long breath. He said, "Jesus, I am so sorry. I cannot believe Linda would do this to you. I cannot believe Megan would be part of it." I told him I could not believe it either, but I had heard it with my own ears. There was no other explanation. Tom thought for a moment, then said he knew a lawyer who might be able to help. His name was Harold, and he specialized in family law and estate matters. Tom said Harold was honest, tough, and knew how to handle situations exactly like mine. I met with Harold the following week. His office was in a modest building downtown. Nothing fancy, but he had diplomas on the wall from good schools and a handshake that told me he meant business. I laid out everything for him, showed him the photos I had taken, the bank statements, the timeline of events. Harold listened carefully, asked a lot of questions, and took detailed notes. When I finished, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mr. Jesus, what your wife and daughter are planning is not just immoral, it is illegal. Attempting to have someone declared incompetent through fraudulent means is a serious crime. And that doctor, if he signs off on a fake diagnosis, he could lose his license and face criminal charges." I asked Harold what I should do. He said the first thing I needed was proof that there was nothing wrong with my mental faculties. He recommended I see a neurologist and get a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. If the results came back clean, which he expected they would, I would have ironclad evidence that their claims were false. The second thing I needed to do was protect my assets. Harold advised me to open new bank accounts in my name only and transfer funds into them. He said I should also make copies of all important documents and store them somewhere safe away from the house. The third thing was to gather more evidence. Harold suggested hiring a private investigator to document the meetings between Linda Megan and Derek. If we could get recordings or photographs of them conspiring, it would strengthen my case enormously. Finally, Harold started preparing divorce papers. He said that given the circumstances, I had grounds for divorce based on fraud, breach of trust, and attempted financial exploitation. He believed I had a strong case for keeping the house and a significant portion of our assets. I followed Harold's advice to the letter. I scheduled an appointment with a neurologist, but Tom recommended a doctor who had no connection to Derek or anyone else involved in this mess. The evaluation took several hours and included memory tests, cognitive exercises, brain scans, and a detailed interview about my daily functioning. A week later, I received the results. My brain was perfectly healthy. There were no signs of dementia, no cognitive decline, no memory impairment whatsoever. The neurologist said my mental faculties were excellent for someone my age, perhaps even above average. I took that report straight to Harold, and he made several copies. We now had medical proof that Linda's claims about my mental health were completely fabricated. Next, I hired a private investigator named Frank. He was a former police detective, a quiet man with sharp eyes who seemed to notice everything. I gave him all the information I had, and he got to work. Over the next 2 weeks, Frank documented everything. He photographed Linda arriving at Derek's house multiple times when she told me she was elsewhere. He recorded conversations through long-range microphones, capturing detailed discussions about their plan to have me committed. He even managed to get footage of Derek meeting with Dr. Morrison at a coffee shop where they discussed the fake diagnosis. The evidence was overwhelming. My wife, my daughter, and my son-in-law had been plotting against me for months. They had lied, stolen, and conspired to take everything I had worked for my entire life. But now the tables had turned. Now I had the proof I needed to fight back. Harold reviewed all the evidence and said we were ready. It was time to confront them. I decided to do it on a Sunday evening. I called Linda Megan and Derek and invited them over for a family dinner. I told them I wanted to discuss some important things about our future, maybe talk about my will and how I wanted to handle things as I got older. They jumped at the invitation. I could hear the excitement in Linda's voice, the way she tried to hide it, but could not quite manage. They thought I was playing right into their hands. They thought I was going to make their job easier by bringing up the very topics they had been scheming about. I spent the whole day preparing. I made my famous barbecue ribs, the ones that used to make Megan's eyes light up when she was a little girl. I set the table with our good china, opened a bottle of wine, and created an atmosphere that seemed warm and inviting. But hidden in the drawer of the sideboard was a folder containing all the evidence Harold and Frank had gathered. Copies of bank statements, photographs, transcripts of recorded conversations, and my neurologist's report. everything I needed to expose their betrayal. They arrived around 5 o'clock. Derek came in first, shaking my hand with that fake smile he always wore. Megan followed, giving me a hug that felt hollow now that I knew what she had been planning. Linda came last, kissing me on the cheek and telling me how wonderful everything smelled. I had arranged for Emma to stay with the neighbors that evening. I told Megan it was because I wanted the adults to have some private time to talk. In truth, I did not want my granddaughter to witness what was about to happen. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation was light and casual. They asked about my week, about the garden, about the football game I had watched the day before. I answered their questions and asked some of my own, playing the role of the unsuspecting father and husband. After we finished eating, I suggested we move to the living room for coffee and the important discussion I had mentioned. They agreed eagerly, exchanging glances that they thought I did not notice. Once we were settled, I took a deep breath and said, "I asked you all here because I have some things I need to say. But first I want to tell you a story." They looked confused but nodded for me to continue. I said, 2 weeks ago, I decided to surprise Derek by coming over to fix that leaky faucet he mentioned. I drove all the way to your house, and when I got there, I saw something I did not expect. Linda's car was parked right out front. I watched their faces carefully. Linda's eyes widened slightly. Megan's smile faltered. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I continued, "I thought it was strange because Linda had told me she was meeting Patricia across town, but I figured maybe she changed her plans. So I walked up to the door to ring the bell. And that is when I heard something that changed everything." The room had gone completely silent. I could see the fear beginning to creep into their eyes. I said, "I heard you, Derek, talking about a nursing home that accepts patients with dementia symptoms. I heard you, Linda, saying that Jesus has been forgetting things and that this was for my own good. I heard you, Megan, saying that after a few months I probably would not even remember who you were." Megan started to speak, but I held up my hand. I said, "I stood outside that window and listened to everything. The fake diagnosis from Dr. Morrison, the plan to have me declared incompetent, the scheme to sell my house and split the money, the $52,000 Linda has already stolen from our savings." Linda's face went pale. She stammered, "Jesus, you do not understand. We were just worried about you. We were trying to protect you." I reached into the sideboard drawer and pulled out the folder. I placed it on the coffee table in front of them. I said, "I understand perfectly, and I have proof of everything." I opened the folder and spread out the documents. The photographs of their secret meetings, the transcripts of their recorded conversations, the bank statements showing Linda's transfers, and the neurologist's report confirming that my mind is completely healthy. Derek grabbed one of the transcripts and started reading. His face went from pale to ashen. Megan burst into tears. Linda just sat there frozen like a deer caught in headlights. I stood up from my chair and looked at each of them in turn. I said, "I worked 35 years on construction sites. I broke my back for this family. I paid for this house with my sweat and blood. I gave up vacations and new clothes and nights out with friends so that Megan could go to college, so that you could have a nice wedding, so that we could all have a good life. And this is how you repay me." Megan fell to her knees, sobbing. "Daddy, I am so sorry. It was Derek's idea. He said we needed the money. I did not want to do it, but he convinced me it was the right thing." Derek shot her a furious look. "Do not put this all on me. Your mother was the mastermind. She is the one who came up with the plan." Linda finally found her voice. "Jesus, please. I love you. I was confused. Derek kept pressuring us, saying we needed to think about our future. I never wanted to hurt you. I shook my head slowly. You did not want to hurt me. You were going to lock me away in a nursing home 3 hours from here. You were going to tell everyone I was crazy. You were going to steal everything I ever worked for. How is that not hurting me? The room fell silent except for Megan's crying. I said, Harold, my lawyer, has already filed for divorce. Given the evidence of fraud and financial exploitation, he believes I have a strong case for keeping the house and recovering the money Linda stole. As for you, Derek, I am seriously considering reporting Dr. Morrison to the medical board. What he agreed to do is not just unethical, it is criminal. Derek's face twisted with anger. You cannot do this. We are family. I looked at him with all the contempt I had been holding inside for weeks. Family does not do what you did. Family does not conspire to destroy each other. You are not my family anymore. You are just strangers who happen to share my blood. I turned to Megan. And you. I loved you more than anything in this world. I would have given my life for you. But you chose money over your own father. That is something I will never be able to forget. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. I said, I want all of you out of my house. Now. Linda stood up shakily. Jesus, where am I supposed to go? I looked at her, this woman I had loved for 35 years, and I felt nothing but cold emptiness. I said, that is not my problem anymore. They left one by one. Derek went first, storming out without a word. Megan followed, still crying, pausing at the door to look back at me with pleading eyes. I turned away. Linda was the last to go. She stopped in front of me and reached for my hand, but I pulled away. She whispered, I am sorry. I closed the door without responding. The weeks that followed were some of the most turbulent of my life, but also some of the most liberating. Harold moved forward with the divorce proceedings. He presented all our evidence to the judge, who was visibly disturbed by the extent of the conspiracy against me. The court granted a temporary order preventing Linda from accessing our joint accounts or selling any marital property. Linda hired her own lawyer and tried to fight back, but she did not have a leg to stand on. The evidence was too overwhelming, too damning. Her attorney advised her to settle rather than risk a trial that would expose her crimes to public scrutiny. In the end, I got to keep the house. Linda was ordered to return the money she had stolen, every last penny. She moved in with her younger sister in Cincinnati, and from what I heard through mutual friends, became something of a pariah among the people who had known us as a couple for decades. Megan and Derek's marriage did not survive the fallout. The financial pressure that had driven them to this scheme only intensified when their plan fell apart. Derek's business venture collapsed because he could not get the capital he was counting on. Creditors came calling, and eventually they had to sell their house to pay off the debts. They separated 6 months later. Megan moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, struggling to make ends meet on a single income. As for Dr. Morrison, I did report him to the medical board. The investigation took several months, but eventually they found enough evidence to suspend his license pending a full review. Whether he will ever practice medicine again is uncertain, but at least he is facing consequences for what he was willing to do. Throughout all of this, my main concern was Emma. She was innocent in all of this, a 4-year-old child who had no idea why her world was falling apart. I did not want her to suffer because of her parents' and grandmother's actions. I reached out to Megan and proposed an arrangement. I would help pay for Emma's preschool and set aside money for her future education. In return, I wanted regular visitation rights time to be a grandfather to the little girl who still called me Grandpa and asked when she could come play at my house. Megan agreed. I think she was too ashamed to refuse, and part of her genuinely wanted Emma to have a relationship with me. Whatever her reasons, the result was that I got to spend time with my granddaughter every week, taking her to the park, reading her stories, watching her grow. As for my own life, I found ways to fill the emptiness that Linda's betrayal had left behind. Tom became an even more important friend than before. He would come over for coffee most mornings, and we would sit on my porch and talk about everything and nothing. He introduced me to his hiking club, a group of men and women my age who explored trails all over Ohio. I discovered that I loved being out in nature, breathing fresh air, pushing my body to climb hills and cross streams. I also started volunteering at a vocational training center downtown. They taught construction skills to young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, kids who reminded me of myself 50 years ago. I became a mentor, sharing everything I had learned over 3 decades in the trade. Seeing those young faces light up when they completed their first project gave me a sense of purpose I had not felt in years. One afternoon, about a year after everything happened, I was sitting on my back porch watching the sunset when Emma came running out of the house. She had been visiting for the weekend, and her energy was boundless as always. She climbed onto my lap, her small arms wrapping around my neck, and said, "I love you, Grandpa." I held her close and felt tears prick my eyes. Despite everything I had lost, I still had this. I still had love in my life, even if it came from unexpected places. I said, "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you will ever know." It has been just over a year now since that Saturday afternoon when I stood outside Derek's house and heard my whole world crumble. A year of pain, anger, grief, and eventually healing. The first few months were the hardest. I would wake up in the middle of the night, reaching for Linda, forgetting for a moment that she was gone. I would pick up my phone to call Megan and share some news, then remember that our relationship was in ruins. The house felt empty, too quiet, haunted by memories of the family I thought I had. I spent a lot of time asking myself what I did wrong. Was I too trusting? Was I too focused on work and not attentive enough to what was happening at home? Did I miss warning signs that should have been obvious? Eventually, I realized that those questions were a trap. What they did was not my fault. Their greed, their selfishness, their willingness to betray someone who loved them unconditionally, those were choices they made. I could not have predicted them, and I could not have prevented them. What I could do was decide how to move forward. I chose not to let bitterness consume me. I had seen what that kind of anger does to people, how it eats them from the inside out, until there is nothing left but a hollow shell. I refused to become that. Instead, I focused on gratitude. Grateful for Tom and his unwavering friendship. Grateful for the hiking club and the new friends I had made. Grateful for the young people at the vocational center who reminded me that my skills and experience still had value. Grateful for Emma and the pure, uncomplicated love of a grandchild. About 6 months ago, Megan sent me a letter. Not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter. She apologized for everything, acknowledged that what she did was unforgivable, and said she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again. But she hoped that someday, maybe we could find a way back to each other. I read that letter many times. I thought about it for weeks, turning it over in my mind, examining my own feelings. Part of me wanted to throw it away and never look back. Part of me remembered the little girl who used to sit on my lap and beg me to read her one more story. I decided to meet her. We sat across from each other at a coffee shop, 2 strangers who used to be father and daughter. She cried. I did not. I told her that I could forgive her in time. Forgiveness was not about letting her off the hook. It was about freeing myself from the weight of resentment. But trust was a different matter. Trust had to be earned, and she had broken it so completely that I did not know if it could ever be rebuilt. She nodded and said she understood. She said she would do whatever it took, however long it took. She said she was in therapy now, working on understanding why she had been so easily manipulated by Derek, why she had allowed greed to override her love for her own father. I told her that time would tell. That was all I could offer. We see each other occasionally now, usually when I pick up or drop off Emma. The conversations are brief and careful, like walking on thin ice. But there is a thread there, however fragile, connecting us. Whether it will grow stronger or snap entirely, only the future knows. As for Linda, I have not seen her since the day I made her leave the house. I heard she tried to reach out a few times through mutual friends, but I made it clear I was not interested. Some betrayals are too deep to bridge. Some wounds never fully heal. I learned something important through all of this. Blood does not always mean loyalty. The people who are supposed to love you unconditionally can be the ones who hurt you the most. And love, real love, is not just a feeling. It is a choice, an action, a commitment that you honor even when it is hard. I also learned that it is never too late to start over. At 58, I thought my best years were behind me. I thought I would coast into old age with Linda by my side, watching our grandchildren grow, enjoying the fruits of a lifetime of labor. That dream died, but a new one took its place. A dream of independence, of self-respect, of living life on my own terms. To anyone watching this who feels like someone is taking advantage of them, who senses that something is wrong but is afraid to face the truth, I want you to know this. Trust your instincts. Do not be afraid to ask questions. Do not let love blind you to reality. You worked hard for what you have. You deserve respect. You deserve honesty. And if the people closest to you are not willing to give you those things, you have every right to walk away. Sometimes the hardest lesson in life is learning that not everyone who says they love you actually does. Their words might be sweet, but their actions tell the real story. Pay attention to what people do, not just what they say. I am sitting on my porch now, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air is cool, autumn is coming, and the trees in my backyard are just starting to turn. This house, the one I built with my own hands and nearly lost to treachery, is still standing. And so am I. I lost a lot this past year. A wife, a daughter, a version of my life that I thought would last forever. But I kept the most important thing, my dignity, my self-respect, my ability to look in the mirror and know that I did not let them break me. That is worth more than any house, any bank account, any relationship built on lies. If my story resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely was not who you thought they were? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below and share your experience. Your story might help someone else who is going through something similar. If this video touched you in any way, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel, so you do not miss the stories we share here. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for giving me your time and attention. I hope that wherever you are, whatever you are going through, you find the strength to stand up for yourself and the courage to keep moving forward. Take care of yourselves. Trust wisely, love deeply, and never forget your own worth.